What is up, guys? Welcome back to another video. This video, I want to talk about some hip mobility stuff. But first, I wanted to say that it's been a little while since I posted here on YouTube. And that's because we've been extremely busy getting new programs launched and released for all you guys. We've also been developing and launching our brand new training program app, which we are super excited about, and that is now available to download from the App Store and the Google Play Store, and all our programs are now available on the app. So all the links for that are below, and I just wanted to start by saying you can go and check all that out and see what work we've been doing in the background. So really excited about all of that. But today what I want to talk about is hips. Okay, hips is huge. I've already made some videos around mobility, and I have the video that I made about 3 steps to improving your hip mobility. And I want to give you guys some insight into our brand new Hip Mobility Program 2.0. And the reason why I made the program, number one, I'll talk quickly about that, but also I want to give you some very simple thought processes around how simple it can actually be to restore hip mobility, okay? Because there's 2 aspects that we need to look at this from. It's not just about mobility. It's not just about range of motion. It's about function. And for me, it's very important to look at the hips from the perspective of what's happening when your foot hits the floor. Because at the end of the day, in my experience, most people who are dealing with chronic pain, particularly around the hips, dealing with stiffness or dealing with some kind of recurrent issue that they just can't really seem to get on top of, it's not always because of a lack of range of motion. A lot of the time it is, but people oftentimes fail in their attempts to improve range of motion because they don't focus on the basic functions of the hip first. So doing all the fancy moves like, Cossack squats, dragon squats, and all these crazy things is all important. And I think there's a huge amount of value in that. But the pursuit of that before you pursue biomechanical function of the hips and trying to optimize for that can oftentimes lead to other issues, okay? Because we're actually going after one element of our hip mobility or our hip function and ignoring the other. And it's the function that's the most important in terms of movement. And then the range of motion can come on top of that. If we don't have the function, it can be very hard to actually make real gains in range of motion. And even if you do, it oftentimes doesn't always lead to a reduction or an elimination of pain. It can, but it doesn't always mean it. And the reason why I wanted to make this video is because a lot of people actually get confused by all the different stuff out there and get stuck when they feel like they're not making progress. And that's what our Hip Mobility Program 2.0 is designed to do, or it's designed with that intent, okay? I've approached this very, very differently. More than likely, you have never trained hips in the way that we train them in this program, because most hip mobility programs will just have you to stretch and just have you to try and work on range of motion. They won't actually focus on the connection between your foot and your hip, what's happening when the foot hits the floor and how does that interact with the hip and dictate what happens at the hip, okay? So that's just a little bit of background, but what I wanted to talk to you guys about today is the basic functions of the hip, okay? And why it's so important and to go after restoring these, but also how simple it can be, okay? Because when you see a million different exercises out there, it becomes very easy to fall into the trap of thinking of, okay, I need like so many different exercises. It's so complex. But really it's about developing basic abilities and the functions of the hip and then building from there, okay? So to give you guys some insight into how I went about designing the program and how I actually work with my one-to-one clients to get results that they haven't been able to get with anyone else, and why I've been able to get those results for myself is because the hip has a couple of basic functions, okay? If we think of the hip in terms of its movement repertoire, its abilities, okay, we break it down into our planes of motion. Number one is we've got this frontal plane motion, which is our ability to adduct the hip, which means that my femur in this case now moves towards the midline. I close this space between my pelvis and my femur. And then we've got abduction on the opposite side, which means that my leg is moving away from my midline. I open the space between my pelvis and my femur, and we start to activate these abductor muscles on the outside of the hip. Okay, so that's our first planes of motion, or our first type of motion that our hip needs to have. Okay, it's this frontal plane of adduction and abduction, and we can do that on both sides. Okay, we get this closing of space and then reciprocating or alternating opening of space. Second is one that most people will be very familiar with, is extension of our hip and flexion of our hip. Now we have a lot more access to flexion in our hip than we do extension of our hip, but at the same time, both need to be there in order for our hips to be able to move and function in the way they're designed. Okay, so when you're walking through the gait cycle, as you move through the world, you need to be able to extend and flex. Okay, so that's our flexion and extension in the sagittal plane. Then finally, we've got our transverse plane, which is our rotational plane. So if you imagine looking down on your body from the top, we've got this external rotation of the hip and internal rotation. And if we take that into a closed chain environment, we've got an internal rotation and an external rotation, okay? So it's like 6 basic movements, and we break it down into 3 sections, 3 planes of motion, okay? And what we want to happen in movement is we want all 3 of these happening together, okay? And sometimes we can get a lot of benefit from actually working on all of these planes at once, but we also need to break down and restore our ability to be able to load into tissue, because one really important concept that's at the core of this program and how I go about approaching issues in general, but particularly at the hips, is our bodies need to be able to lengthen before they can shorten, okay? So what that means is, for example, if I cannot extend my hip and lengthen the tissue at the front, that means my ability to flex my hip will be hampered to some degree. It's the same if I cannot hinge and flex my hip and open the space here, my ability to be able to extend my hip is going to be hampered. And again, it carries also into our ability to adduct and abduct. If I'm limited in my ability to load into my tissue, then I'm probably going to be limited in my ability to unload that tissue. So we've got this movement happening along this continuum, okay? My ability to lengthen is only as great as my ability to shorten, and vice versa, okay? And if we think about it in this way, we start to come back to this more balanced, neutral point around which we can move. It doesn't mean we want to get to neutral and stay there. It means we want to move from this position so that we can move in opposite directions. And that's a really important concept to understand and get your head around. So the way we've broken down this program is first to re-establish those abilities of, can I abduct? Can I adduct? Can I flex? Can I extend? Can I internally and can I externally rotate? And can we do that in a genuine way? Because there's so many ways our body can compensate. But what we do in the program is break it down, peel it right back to the basics, and do it in a way that mimics how we walk. Because it's very easy to sit on the floor and do all these movements, but also we need to be able to, at the end of the day, we need to be comfortable at loading into our hip, loading out of our hip, transferring to the other side, loading in, getting into it, and loading out, okay? And we need to increase the complexity of that over time in a progressive way. So we break down the abilities in individual planes of like improving our adduction. Can we get the shift of our pelvis over the hip, over the femur, okay? And how do we use that then? How do we use that loading potential, and how do we incorporate that into our walk, okay, into our run, into our ability to be able to move through the world? Because at the end of the day, if we can't load up these structures and if we can't access these fundamental abilities at the hip, that leads to a lot of issues. Our hips are huge drivers of movement. I believe that the hips are one of the most important areas of the body that we need to restore function in if you want to move without pain. They dictate so much that happens in your body. And your ability to use your hips will dictate whether you can use your back chain. And the back chain, if we can restore that back chain dominance in our movement, again, we relieve so many issues, because so many of us are stuck in our front chain. So to summarize and recap on this video, the hip program is designed to restore function first, okay? And that's how I approach my work with every single person I work with, and that's what I've tried to carry into the program. All that experience, all that trial and error of working with one-to-one clients, I've put that into the program in the best way I possibly can to work for as many people as I can possibly make it work for. Okay, and we break it down to these abilities, but we need to focus on that first. Can you load your hip in the frontal plane? Can we abduct? Can we adduct? Can we get the things happening at the pelvis and the femur that we want? Then can we genuinely extend our hip? Can we flex our hip? Can we flex our hip in a hinge, which is a huge part of our programming, accessing this hinge so that we can then extend our hip? Can we internally rotate our hip so that we can externally rotate our hip? And again, we take those individual abilities and functions then into real life. Can I get all of those things happening at the one time? My internal rotation, my flexion, and my adduction all happening together so that I can then extend, externally rotate, and abduct. Okay, can we make those happen together? Because that's how we group up our movements. Okay, we want internal rotation, adduction, and flexion all happening together. And then we want external rotation, abduction, and extension happening together. And that's basically how we move. And that's why this program is so different, because we restore your ability of your hips to function as they need to do in movement as a first. And then we start to develop ranges of motion. And that's why we've broken it into 3 different phases. We focus on the function, we focus on the control, and then we start to really develop our range of motion once we've covered the basic functions of the hip and restore that in movement. Because the reality is, for most people, they just want to move without pain. And I found a lot of frustration, both from myself in the past and from people, of they invest into these mobility programs that only focus on range of motion. They have no real consideration for biomechanics and how the body moves. And for me, that's where it should all start, because I tried for years to focus on improving my range of motion and to do these moves that look cool, but it's not always the best approach. It can help and it's a worthwhile pursuit, but you need to look at how does your body move from a biomechanical perspective. And is it doing that in the most optimal way that we know how to make that happen? Is it doing that firstly? Because if not, your body's going to hold tension, your body's not going to let you access new ranges of motion, it's not going to allow your joints to function as they should if you don't have that baseline set up. And that's what we're trying to do with the program. So I hope this helps give you some insights into the hips in particular and how they move, okay? And really it is quite simple, but we need, just like anything else, losing body fat, building muscle is quite simple, but it's not always easy, because you have to do the work and follow the actual steps that are proven to get you there, okay? If you want to drop body fat, then you need to be in a calorie deficit. You need to do specific type of training if you want to build muscle. And if you follow that process and do it consistently for the required amount of time, then you will get the results that you want to get. And it's the exact same for mobility. It's the exact same for hip mobility. It's the exact same for restoring your natural biomechanics and getting out of pain. It's the exact same process. It's simple, but it does not always mean it's easy, because you need to do it for the amount of time that you need to do it to get the result and do the right stuff. And that's something I wish I had been told 10 years ago. It was all made to seem very complex to me when I was seeing physios and other coaches to try and help. And my goal with this channel, with the Ancestral Athlete brand, with our programs, is to really simplify it down and distill it down to the simple processes that work. Because they're just like anything else, the body will adapt and respond to the stimulus you give it. So therefore, if we give it right stimulus for the response we want, we will get it if we expose it to that stimulus for long enough, okay? And that's what it's all about. But I hope that helps give you some insight, guys. I'm gonna call the video at this here. Drop some comments below, let me know your questions, let me know your thoughts, let me know that this makes sense for you. And I'd love for you guys to check out our Hip Mobility Program 2.0. There's nothing else like this out there, and I really think that you guys can have a transformative effect on how your body moves with this program alone. And the links to the details of that hip mobility program and how you can get it and access our brand new training app are all in the description below, as well as all our other training programs. So make sure you check those out, guys. I believe that these programs can have an extremely transformative effect on how your body moves, and will help you break through plateaus and sticking points that you haven't been able to find solutions to up to this point. So make sure you check those out in the description below. That's it for this, guys. I'll see you in the next video.